सुनने वालों को सिराज ज़ैदी का बहुत बहुत प्यार भरा आदाब, नमस्कार and good afternoon. Welcome to Apna Radio, broadcasting at 93.9 Dublin South FM. Each Thursday from 3 to 4, I'm here broadcasting from the studio to the world. Tune me in. सुनने वालों को सिराज ज़ैदी का बहुत बहुत नमस्कार, आदाब and good afternoon. You're very welcome to the program. You're listening to Apna Radio, broadcasting at 93.9 Dublin South FM. Now we're reaching beyond the boundaries of Ireland because the technology allows us to share it on YouTube, and our delectable team work immediately after the show is over and upload it on YouTube so you can listen it at your own timing. You don't have to listen live. But if you can catch live, why not? 3 o'clock every day, every Thursday, not every day. I wish every day. But every Thursday from 3 to 4, India time, 7:30 to 8:30. And of course, the European time is add on an hour here, an hour there, because the listeners are in Holland, in Germany, in France. Our own diaspora community is catching up with my voice, which is thank you very much for listening me wherever you are. And of course in London, and of course in the Middle East and Dubai. You see, certain things you cannot say now in the media, so-called, what we call it, a goody media now, doesn't allow you to say a few things. But because I'm a fearless individual, I don't hold any, what I call it, grudges against anybody, but there are things to be talked about it and it needs to be discussed. So therefore, people are beginning to tune me in more and more, and I've seen that response from world over. Anyway, that's a big news. The news of the week is here. Charmain is here, so I'll let her take away the news, and let's see what she has brought to the listeners. So there you go. Charmain, you take it away.
Good afternoon. I'm Charmain Colvin, and you are listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM. On India this week, Quad foreign ministers have strongly condemned the Pahalgam attack, calling for perpetrators, organisers and financiers of this reprehensible act to be brought to justice without any delay. They urged all UN member countries to cooperate with all authorities under international law in this regard. Indian Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong and Japan Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya met in Washington this week for the second Quad Foreign Ministers meeting this year. In a joint statement, there was no mention of the Russia-Ukraine war or the conflict in the Middle East or West Asia, rather strong condemnation for the terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir on April the 22nd this year, which claimed the lives of 25 Indian nationals and one Nepali citizen while injuring several others. They also launched the Quad Critical Minerals Initiative and announced plans to host the first Quad Indo-Pacific Logistics Network field training exercise this year and launched the Quad Ports of the Future Partnership in Mumbai. The next Quad Leaders Summit is to be hosted by India later this year. Reaffirming its steadfast commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific, the Quad said, as four leading maritime nations in the Indo-Pacific, we are united in our conviction that peace and stability in the maritime domain underpin the security and prosperity of the region. The exiled Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, has confirmed that he will have a successor after his death, ending years of uncertainty. Celebrating his 90th birthday this week, the Dalai Lama said in a video message that only the trust that he founded could appoint his successor, and said no one else has any authority to interfere in this matter. According to Tibetan tradition, Dalai Lamas are reincarnated after they die. The current Dalai Lama's exile from Tibet, after China annexed it in the 1950s, has made succession a highly contentious issue. Beijing rejected the statement, saying his successor would be from inside China and must be approved by the government. Hundreds of followers gathered on Wednesday to hear the long-awaited announcement in the Indian town of Dharamshala, where the Dalai Lama lives. In his statement, he reiterated that the 𝐻𝐸𝐴 Phodrang Trust, the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, should accordingly carry out the procedures of search and recognition in accordance with past tradition. Dharamshala is holding the Dalai Lama's milestone 90th birthday celebrations, which began on Monday, his birthday according to the Tibetan lunar calendar, and will conclude on the 6th of July, his official birthday. Celebrations will be attended by more than 7,000 guests, including a number of Indian ministers. With just days to go before a 9th of July deadline set by US President Donald Trump, hopes of clinching an interim trade pact between Delhi and Washington remain alive but increasingly entangled in hard bargaining. Despite hints from the White House that a deal is imminent, and Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's upbeat assertion that Delhi would welcome a big, good, beautiful agreement in response to Trump's claim that a trade deal with Delhi is coming and would open up the Indian market, negotiators remain locked in tough discussions. Indian trade officials extended their stay in Washington for another round of talks, even as Delhi signals very big red lines on farm and dairy protections and the US presses for wider market openings. The tone remains optimistic, but the windows to strike a deal appear to be narrowing. If talks collapse, experts believe Trump is unlikely to reinstate the steep 26% tariff rate on India. Instead, a 10% baseline tariff may apply to most Indian imports, on top of existing MFN rates. A most favoured nation rate is the lowest tariff rate that a World Trade Organization member country levies on another WTO member. While 57 countries face these levies in April, only the UK has secured a deal so far. At least 34 people have been killed in a massive fire at a pharmaceuticals factory in the southern state of Telangana, according to news agencies. The blast took place during working hours on Monday at a unit of Sagatchi Industries, leaving several injured and in critical condition. Police have registered a case against the management of Sagatchi Industries based on a complaint by the son of a victim. Many of the workers were migrants from states such as Odisha, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal. The ruling Congress government in the state expressed deep shock over the massive fire accident and said compensation will be given to the families of the deceased and injured. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also expressed condolences and announced compensation of 200,000 rupees for families of the deceased and 50,000 to those injured. And finally, Italian luxury fashion label Prada has said that it acknowledges the Indian roots of its new footwear line, days after the design sparked a controversy in India. The sandals, showcased at the Milan Fashion Show last week, had an open-toe braided pattern that closely resembled the Kolhapuri sandals made in the Indian states of Maharashtra and Karnataka. Prada described the sandals as leather footwear, but did not mention its Indian origins, prompting backlash and allegations of cultural appropriation in India. Named after a city in Maharashtra where they are made, Kolhapuri sandals trace their roots back to the 12th century. And that's all on India this week. You have been listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Thank you very much, Charmain. What a lovely item you have put together. And I never knew that Prada could steal would these guys would have enough kudos or financial muscles to sue Prada. It remains to be seen, but that's a great news item. And condolences for the great tragedy in one of the states in India and southern states about this tragic loss of lives that had happened in the pharmaceutical industry, in the factory. But as I said, India is a large country and these things do occur regularly. We're still talking about it. Few months ago, there was an anniversary of Union Carbide. If you remember the greatest, the Bhopal, there was an accident in Bhopal in a factory. But I don't know. I mean, the forcing of regulations are pretty much loose, and sometimes these things happen anyway. Things in the world can never stop, and the world never stops, so I don't stop, and I try to bring as much as possible the new things and the old things, and of course, the flavor of the week and the flavor of the month. Let me introduce you today, and I will be talking to a guest in the studio. Her name is Tasneem Khan. Tasneem Khan is a marine biologist based in Kelkenny and runs a delectable, wonderful film festival called the Environmental Film Festival, and of course, associated with Science, Ecology, Arts School. Studios and labs there, and she'll be talking about it herself and indeed where she come from and what she's been doing there. But before that, I will bring Sharad in the picture, and because Sharad is talking about a very serious stuff which is very passionate and close to my heart, and I've spoken about this issue many times. The role of United Nations. What is United Nations set at 50 years ago, after the Second World War, this big idea, has been set up. But since then, what United Nations has done is questionable. And Sharad is a great one and brave one to talk about it now, because now than never ever again is a dire need for United Nations to intervene to create a peace in the world. Which is very close to my heart, and I really want to talk about peace in the world in this context. But United Nations is under criticism from a lot of people, and not only intellectuals, writers, playwrights. In fact, years and years ago, the playwright called David Hare, an English playwright, has written a stage play called The Map of the World, and in which he has introduced an Indian character called Mehta, and Mehta was played by the wonderful actor that we have, Roshan Seth, and he had a soliloquy talking about the United Nations, that how United Nations has failed in its commitment to create a peace in the world. But anyway, we'll listen to Sharad and see what he has put together. And so sit back, relax, and listen to what Sharad has done, his groundwork on United Nations.
United Nations was not created to bring us heaven, but it was to save us from hell. With great disappointment, I have to say, we find ourselves slipping into the world of really unchecked power, rising authoritarianism, and overall institutional decay. The United Nations has tied us all with an outdated structure and is being held hostage by the very nations, by the very countries that was meant to regulate it. And therefore, I must say, it is not equipped to meet the demands, the new world, the modern world of 21st century. When the Charter of the United Nations was signed in 1945, just a few months after the end of World War II, at the time it was hailed as a moral and institutional thought leadership. President Harry Truman declared that the true power of this charter lay just not in the text, but in the moral fiber of the governments, and that would uphold it. Now today, some 80 years on, that moral fiber is shredded, seems to be not existing, and rather the evidence says no one cares. The United Nations, conceived to promote peace, justice, and humanity, now serves as the stage of geopolitical theater. That's what we can derive from the Security Council meetings. And there are great evidences that the countries are pushing forward their self-interest for a pathetic reason, hypocrisy. And these are the council members who were supposed to enforce the ideals of the United Nations. People were troubled after the post-World War. The emotions were high, and hence there was a great sense of optimism post-World War, and there was a determination to never allow such thing again, to never allow the devastation of the two great wars affect the humanity again. And this gave actually the rise to multilateralism and a consensus to build around peace and human rights and international cooperation. It did made a lot of progress on the fronts where there was a general consensus, like eradication of smallpox or the Montreal Protocol to reverse the ozone depletion, the reduction of global child mortality, advancement of human rights, but then, on the other hand, we don't have a Secretary General who is a woman. So the equality is not starting at home. And to continue counting the achievements during the Cold War, the cooperation on the global health and the development showed that the United Nations could be more than a debating club. So there are achievements at the global level, and these achievements have been making effect to the general population, but they are now becoming a past. Today, the Security Council has become a platform of world's greatest powers to assert dominance or to block action that doesn't suit their agenda. The biggest weapon to dismantle the very concept of Security Council at United Nations is the veto power. At the heart of this United Nations dysfunction lies the Security Council, whose 5 permanent members, like the US, the UK, Russia, China, and France, they have a disproportionate power through their veto rights. And this mechanism, which was originally designed to prevent another world war in order to bring about unanimous decision-making consensus, it has now instead paralyzed the global governance for peace. So as of June 2025, the Security Council has passed, if you total up, 2,783 resolutions. And out of those, nearly 300 times, a single permanent member has vetoed a resolution. And this is many a times not to protect global peace, but to shield its own geopolitical interest or its ally. And this abuse of veto power has crippled the Council's effectiveness. The highest number, Russia, for example, has used veto for more than 129 times, including to block actions on Syria and to shield itself from accountability of invading Ukraine and annexation of Crimea. Now there are disputes about what belongs to whom, but then the result is a war. China, while less active historically, has also employed this concept of veto, and this is to stall human rights inquiries and peacekeeping actions. United States more than 50 times just to shield Israel from the scrutiny. And that's including a 2011 resolution which it vetoed. And this resolution was to condemn Israeli settlement in the West Bank, and 2018 resolution condemning Israel's use of force in Gaza, and most recently multiple ceasefire calls between 2023 and 25 to stop escalation of the Gaza conflict. As a result, these vetoes have isolated the United States diplomatically and the other member states who were enabling this impunity, let's say this. So France and the UK, though they are less frequent users in this veto power gameplay, but they are complicit in maintaining a structure that sustains their privileged status. And how can we forget the June 2025 resolution which US vetoed, and that was simply to stop an unconditional ceasefire in Gaza. If the war doesn't stop, how can peace be restored? And how can US veto that? So there is a growing pattern of playing some kind of arsonist by the United States. They were the architect, but now it's about anarchy. It's about not following the rules. So there are funding cuts, especially under the Trump administration, which has affected agencies like World Health Organization or UNRWA. Or earlier, there have been legal evasions bypassing the Security Council to invade Iraq in 2003. And that had set dangerous precedents, undermining international law and accountability. What they did in 2003 is under question every time any other country invades a country or makes military ambitions. So American leadership, by its position, has grown erratic, and it is swinging between an overreach or isolationism. And this is also leaving its allies like European Union or Great Britain confused. On the other side, it has emboldened the adversaries like Russia and China. Russia, on the other hand, has made veto, the obstruction of a resolution, its strategic art. It has repeatedly blocked action on Syria's chemical weapon use. And in the process has propped up an authoritarian regime. Ultimately, the Syrians have gotten rid of Assad, but then the price of his brutal regime had costed millions of lives. Russia's action in Ukraine represents perhaps the most egregious violation of United Nations Charter in modern times. I wouldn't say most because United Nations and Israel are in competition, but together the Security Council has been rendered meaningless, helpless to act on its own charter. Consequently, Russia has now started to leverage the anti-UN or anti-America sentiments to influence Africa and elsewhere, and it is portraying itself as an anti-Western alternative. So there are moves into Mali's establishment, and by deploying mercenaries under the guise of peacemaking, and its contribution towards world and international peace is questionable. China cares least for the United Nations. It uses its position with a strategic ambiguity, and it has repurposed itself to only reflect Chinese authoritarian governance model and its strategic interest across the globe. So, for example, it has diluted human rights language in the international treaties, that is to shield itself from scrutiny over Hong Kong human rights violations and Uyghur atrocities. It has created its own power, unchallenged power in the South China Sea. On and off, it comes in news with its threat to Philippines or Taiwan. So overall, if you see, these actors who were the legitimate pillars of the UN Charter are the states who are eroding the spirit of international peace. Issues like Palestine, nuclear proliferation, humanitarian interventions, these are failing either due to double standards or because of the ambiguity in the United Nations. So if you see a brief modern history of United Nations, despite the troubles at the Security Council, the adoption of the historic pandemic agreement by World Health Assembly in 2024, or the resolution on crime against humanity, and the Pact for Future signed in 2023, they illustrate that there is a need, there is a wish for multilateral cooperation, and on a deeper observation, you see that this coalition is about multi-power, is about middle power nations or a broader General Assembly who have broken this gridlock of the 5 veto power nations and have gone through these historic agreements. So this brings me to the point that there needs to be a structural reform of United Nations if we have to bring peace and prosperity at the global level. This reform should go beyond these 5 countries. Their days are over. The Security Council has to be reconstituted, and the Charter, the UN Charter, the UN Secretariat needs to reclaim its role in crisis mediation. It has to unlock from the wishes, the power of the member states of the Security Council. We need a more independent Secretary General who is just not a symbol, but is also a person whose verdict, whose opinion is sought, whose leadership will mean something for the United Nations and for the global peace at large. So is United Nations fit for 21st century? The answer is no. We need a radical rethinking of its power dynamics and purpose. And today, when we are on the verge of Third World War, the need for a mediation, a need for a neutral, collaborative effort of all the nations is the need of the hour. And if you put a blanket cover on governance of United Nations, it is the moral fabric that we spoke about at the beginning. The moral fabric has to be strengthened. The outlook towards the crisis management, towards the ambition of the veto-wielding power of these nations have to be reassessed, and the United Nations Security Council should not be just left to be a theater of arguments and discussions. It has to be a place for a positive action. With that hope, I leave you until next week. Stay safe, stay informed, and dutifully ask questions. Bye for now.
Dublin South FM. You wouldn't buy a car without knowing its history. So why would you buy a story without knowing who's telling it? Come here and I tell you. It's not always easy to verify what you see, read, or hear. But now there's help. Visit www.bemediasmart.ie. Stop, think, check. Be Media Smart. Brought to you by Media Literacy Ireland, supported by RTE.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
Okay, so we have in the studio our guest, Tasneem Khan. Tasneem is a marine biologist based in Kelkenny, and she also runs the Environmental Film Festival. Tasneem, you're very welcome to the program, and thank you very much for coming into the studio. Tell me about who are you and how come you end up in Ireland?
Well, I've ended up in Ireland due to various circumstances and happenstances, but I'm very happy to be here. It is. It's a beautiful country, and most importantly, it's an island, and I have an island affinity. So I ended up in Ireland in 2020, and I've had a few amazing years here so far, and lots planned. So I'm based in Kelkenny, and prior to that was living in Waterford down by the coast in Dunmore East. My background, like you mentioned, is in marine zoology, but my work is more connected to coastal systems at large, looking at socio-ecological aspects of coastal systems. And what I've been practicing over the last 10 years or so is really looking at how to embed the learnings from coastal systems and communities into mainstream education, and what we can learn from our marine and coastal systems across the board, not just in biology alone.
Please tell me about the Sea School, Science, Ecology, Arts School in Kelkenny that you run.
Yes, so Sea School is a slight play on the word sea, because even though my own passion is around the sea, sea stands for Science, Ecology and Art. And I work with students and schools, but also with various other interest groups and organizations, looking at how we can use these three lenses of inquiry, so to speak, the lenses of science, ecology and art, to explore the world around us, to work, to develop curriculum, to solve problems, to develop policy and responses to some of our current needs as far as the climate crisis goes. It's quite heartening to see some big shifts in Ireland in the last few years, especially. Yes, some of it is driven by European arm twisting and policy requirements, and we're supposed to meet certain goals by 2030. But I'd say down at the grassroots level, you are certainly seeing an interesting shift in the general state of mind and awareness about our environment. I think some of it is too stark and in our faces to ignore. And I do think in Ireland, there is quite a positive response to working with our environment as opposed to against it. A lot of my work prior to moving here has been in the Indian Ocean region. So it's interesting to contrast and compare some of it. Of course, you're dealing with much smaller outputs and populations in general here. So it does seem a lot less. And often you look around you and think, this is just beautiful. There's really nothing to complain about. But indeed, there is a lot to be concerned about, because it's all proportionate. So there is a lot of pollution. There is a lot of runoff into our rivers, along our coasts. But you're also seeing interesting responses from coastal communities. And I don't personally think, whether it's here or in the East, that it is the small fishing communities to blame, or it's the small coastal communities who live on subsistence livelihoods that are often the ones marginalized in the bargain. But in fact, these are larger systemic issues that we need to deal with. And a lot of it comes back to education and looking at how we problem solve, how we create the businesses and the lives we create around ourselves. I did study zoology at Pune University, and then I did marine zoology at Friday Harbor in Washington University. I think there is certainly a lot of recognition, and undoubtedly more so in the last couple of years. I mean, Ireland being an island nation, there's no doubt that there is a huge understanding or growing understanding of the fact that our water is more than, I think, 8 times than our land territory, maybe almost 10 if I'm not mistaken. But so I would say there is a lot of growing awareness within at a council level as well as at a national level. And we have in the last couple of years, again, seen a remarkable shift in the climate action plan in Ireland, which has really made big moves and raised a lot of awareness, as well as our biodiversity action plan, looking at the coming 5 years. So there are a lot of right steps in the right direction. There are undoubtedly drastic changes. You're seeing huge differences in the levels of precipitation here in Ireland, even what we'd consider wet, when we'd consider expected wet seasons and dry seasons. You have the often rain going well into the beginning of summer, which changes the way the cattle use fields. Similarly, you don't have enough rain when it's required for farmers and for crops. So rather than narrow it down to just a sea level rise or just warming of certain regions, because that's what really draws attention and news often, it's the continuous corrosion and erosion of the system at large. So you're seeing huge shifts in phenology when plants flower, for instance, when pollinators are out, when it rains, when a certain crop fails or succeeds. And so it's all these sort of cumulative changes that we're seeing in our climate that are causing the big shifts. The policies have shifted in the right direction. Everyone is working hard to catch up. So it's to be seen. I think there's a lot of attempt to meet these so-called goals. And what is to be seen is how we make those moves. And I think a lot of it is really a mindset shift, where if we stop looking at it as a compliance requirement and start thinking about it as a long-term vision, as this is what we're doing for the survival of humanity and for our own grandchildren and children, and stop looking at it as boxes to be checked and compliance requirements, whether you're a company or an individual. The Environmental Film Festival that I've been hosting in both Waterford and Kilkenny for the last 2 years is part of a much larger movement based in India, a festival called the All Living Things Environmental Film Festival. That's ALTF, and the website is altf.in. And ALTF is, I call it a movement more than just a festival, because it's an incredible model where we have looked at decentralizing cinema. And the All Living Things Environmental Film Festival is about taking stories of climate, like we were just talking about, from around the world and sharing them with audiences from around the world. So last year, 2024, was the 5th year of this decentralized festival, and we saw over 70 films that was selected from over 35 different countries, and again, over 30 different languages. And the idea here is that these films are screened in unexpected locations, taking cinema out of the cinema house and bringing them to people that wouldn't otherwise engage in this discourse of environmental cinema. And exchanging stories from around the world, because some of it are stories of catastrophe, but some of them are stories of hope and stories of success, models that have worked. And very often, when you're in the middle of a disaster or a crisis, you forget that you can learn from other communities. So using cinema as a way to understand what this global climate crisis is and how we can effectively move through it as communities around the world. So we have really seen a phenomenal uptake in ALTF. And 2 years ago, in 2023, I decided to bring ALTF to Ireland. We started very small, just with one venue in Kilkenny and one venue in Waterford. And last year, we expanded, and we had, I think, about 8 nights of screening altogether. And every screening curation looks at bringing films in that are relatable to local audiences, stories of relevance. So In Waterford, we looked at stories of fisheries, of ocean dynamics, of ocean communities. And in Kelkenny, we explored films around river systems, farming, urban wildlife. And each evening of film screenings is paired with a panel discussion, bringing in local community members to talk about responses and issues at their level. They are from all over the world. Last year, we saw about 38 Indian premieres as well, but there were a number of films from all over the world. So it's usually this time of the year that the films start pouring in. We have an excellent team in India who are going through these, and our program director then curates a final selection that can range anywhere between 60 and 80. And then local screening partners will pick from this pool of films. We have a wide range of films. So we have animations, we have short films, we have student films, documentaries, and feature films. Absolutely. And there's some amazing cinema coming out of India in the documentary space, especially. There are a few feature films as well in this. I mean, it's interesting because elephants are a beautiful species to really draw the emotion or the sentiment of human beings. So I think very often if you want to tug at someone's emotional strings and get them to really pay attention, using animals like elephants or pandas work really well. Mammals in general, because they're cute and you feel for them. But they tell much bigger stories of habitats and habitat fragmentation and all the other invisible species, or the ones that get forgotten in the bargain. I didn't work with it personally, but I lived in a place in Havelock in the Andaman Islands where there was an elephant that did get a lot of media attention, Rajan, indeed. Yeah, so I've spent quite a bit of time with him.
Riding it as well?
Yes, a couple of times in the water, yeah. The water? He was, all elephants can swim, but he was somehow publicized as the swimming elephant, which isn't an unusual thing for elephants, actually.
Thank you so much, Tasneem Khan, for coming to the studio and traveling all the way from Kilkenny. I really appreciate your time and your effort coming into the studio. Really, really appreciated that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siraj. I'm really happy to be here.
Broadcasting from the Dundrum Town Centre, this is Dublin South FM.
Are you part of a local community group or representative organisation active in the Dun Laoghaire Rathdown area? Why not join a network of over 400 such groups in the Dun Laoghaire Rathdown Public Participation Network? You can join the group, influence local policy, get regular updates about funding and other opportunities, connect with other groups like yours, publicise your group, and even get free training and support. Make sure your voice is heard through DLR Public Participation Network as a registered group in the county. Dun Laoghaire Rathdown Public Participation Network. For full information, find us online at dlrppn.ie. That's dlrppn.ie.
Broadcasting to South Dublin on 93.9. This is Dublin South FM.
Indeed, this is Dublin South FM, and very welcome to the program. And you are into the a kind of a time, June time and summertime. Many things happened last week. We had a very good 21st of June is declared by the international bodies and organizations called the Yoga Day, and we had a successful Yoga Day with various locations, including in Cashel, which is coming as a prominent place for yoga, and a lot of Federation of Indian Communities in Ireland, FICCI, which I'm a founding member, were the participant in the Yoga Day. And we're coming up now. The next one is going to be the Culture India Day, which would be at the Marine Square Park, in fact, near the 15th of August, that we do every year. A culture show, get together in an open park and all that. So this is the week and the month of the flavor of all of that is happening in our city. What else is happening? Yes, festival is back. Festival is in 16th year. I'm talking about my festival, the 16th Indian Film Festival of Ireland. This year's flavor is a bit different from the previous year because we have a new venue, and I'm not disclosing any venue at the moment, neither the Gala Award Night venue nor the actual screening venue. The only thing I can say is that opening and closing films will be in the multiplexes. As usual, we had been doing it for years, either in Dundrum Cinema here, in the Dundrum Town Centre. We have a multiplex movies at, or and contemplating considering the newly opening cinema at the Nutgrove Shopping Centre. You probably would know that. There are 2 cinemas going in there, where it used to be Roche's Store, it used to be Museum Arcade, but it's been bought by my friend Mark Anderson from the Omniplex chain of cinemas. So they're the one who's installing a 2-screen cinema there. So I'm excited, and it's our local cinema, and hopefully if I'll get the space there, we might do the opening and closing film there. So that I'm excited about it. The only thing I would say that the program is shaping well. Films are more or less locked in. Program is closed, barred from 1 or 2 films I'm still waiting for to arrive. And there's it's a mixed bag. Some commercial films, some documentaries, some short films. Oh yeah, talking about the short films, I've got a wonderful filmmaker, 𝐀𝐩𝐧𝐚 𝐑𝐚𝐲 from Amsterdam. 𝐀𝐩𝐧𝐚 is the 5th generation Indian community, diaspora community living in Amsterdam, in Holland. And she's a filmmaker. She's a delectable actress as well. And she made a wonderful 2 films that we are screening. One is a feature film. The other one is a short films. So that's a category of the festival. It's called the Diaspora Film category. I always try to bring the filmmakers who live outside India, of an Indian origin, who are indulging themselves into the filmmaking. And that's a category that I've created years and years ago. And we try to actually fulfill. From London, I brought Sangeeta Datta for Life Goes On, a beautiful film she made, a feature film, starring late Ompuri, Sharmila Tagore and all that. And of course, I also brought a lot of filmmakers from Canada, from America, who are of Indian origin under the title of the Diaspora Filmmakers. So this is something which is happening, and I'm happy that this year again this will happen. And 𝐀𝐩𝐧𝐚 will travel from Amsterdam to take part in the festival, and I hopefully Tasneem Khan, will travel from Kelkenny to participate in the festival, and we'll talk about her films and what she's curating. That's the film festival. I'll be giving you on an ongoing basis the updates of the progress of the film festival, what's happening there and what is not happening. Now, the other thing which I'm completely going to talk about that is take a break. I suppose I'll take a quick break, and then we'll talk about that.
Broadcasting from the Dundrum Town Centre, this is Dublin South FM.
Are you part of a local community group or representative organisation active in the Dun Laoghaire Rathdown area? Why not join a network of over 400 such groups in the Dun Laoghaire Rathdown Public Participation Network? You can join the group, influence local policy, get regular updates about funding and other opportunities, connect with other groups like yours, publicise your group, and even get free training and support. Make sure your voice is heard through DLR Public Participation Network as a registered group in the county. Dun Laoghaire Rathdown Public Participation Network. For full information, find us online at dlrppn.ie. That's dlrppn.ie.
Broadcasting to South Dublin on 93.9. This is Dublin South FM.
Welcome back to the programme. Indeed, you are listening to Apna Radio, broadcasting at Dublin South FM 93.9. Now, we are close to the programme, and time is up. Clock never stops. But I'll try to squeeze one last item, and that is basically the month of the year. You know that the Gregorian calendar is not the only calendar that different cultures follow. The Hindu culture starts from Diwali. The Sikh calendar starts from something else. But majority of the people of the world do follow Gregorian calendar, and we go from January to December, from January to December every year. But however, there's another calendar, which is Islamic calendar, and I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about the significance of the Islamic calendar, which many people perhaps do not know. Our listeners do not know. Hardly people would know the month of the 12 months of the Islamic calendar, because they all have a different significance. Each month is different. So we just started last week a new Islamic calendar, but which is not being celebrated. And then I'll talk about that. Why is that? And that would be the end of the program, because it has a different significance. And so therefore a major incident happened at the beginning of the Islamic calendar called Muharram, and Muharram is commemorated worldwide by the incident, by the eulogies, by the poetry, by the lectures about a battle that took place on this 10th day of Muharram called Ashura. Ashura is the Arabic word for the 10th day. And therefore, what happened in that thing, the conflict between, justice and injustice, and people who were imposing injustices to people, like now people are imposing injustices to certain communities. So one person stood up, and that was a grandson of Prophet Muhammad himself, Hussein, his name was, and he got slaughtered mercilessly on the 10th day of calendar of Muharram calendar. So worldwide, people do commemorate. They read poetries. They talk about passionately, out loudly display their emotions, and really commemorate the death anniversaries of relatives and the family members of the Prophet Muhammad's family and the Hussein's family who's been killed there. So here's a track talking about the son of Hussein. His name was Ali Akbar, and it's been recited by a reciter called Rukhsar Hussain. And so sit back, relax, and listen to this, please. Thank you.
गश खाता हूँ बाबा, रखता हूँ कदम अपने तो गिर जाता हूँ बाबा, गिर जाता हूँ बाबा तो फिर उठा مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا اولاد کسی باپ سے اس طرح نہ چھوٹے کیا مجھ پہ گزرتی ہے کوئی مجھ سے تو پوچھے لگتا ہے کہ پھٹ جائے گا اب میرا کلیجہ مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا میں صبتے پیمبر ہوں سبھی جان رہے ہیں زہرا کا پیسر ہوں سبھی پہچان رہے ہیں لیکن کوئی اکبر سے نہیں مجھ کو ملاتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا میں صبح سے ہر ایک کے لاشے پہ گیا تھا اس وقت میرے ساتھ جواں لال میرا تھا افسوس کہ اب اس کا ہی لاشا نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا عباس کے غم میں یہ کمر ٹوٹ چکی ہے اکبر کی جدائی میں نظر پھوٹ چکی ہے تقدیر میں ہر سمت ہے اب میرے اندھیرا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا خیمے میں اگر لوٹ کے پہنچیں گے نا اکبر سیدانیاں خیموں سے نکل آئیں گی باہر اکبر کو کہاں پاؤں سمجھ میں نہیں آتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی اکبر کا جنازہ نہیں ملتا مجھ کو علی जनाजा नहीं मिलता मुझको अली अकबर का जनाजा नहीं मिलता मुझको अली अकबर का जनाजा नहीं मिलता सोचा था जिससे होगा ज़ईदी का सहारा एक रोज़
So that's all, folks, and thank you very much for listening. And that's I'll be revisiting everything that we talked about it this week, no doubt about it. But time's up, clock up. Once again, thank you very, very much for listening. I'll be back same time, same place next week. Bye for now. Have a great weekend.
असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ आ जाओ चांद मेरे तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं असगर मैं तेरी माँ हूँ आ जाओ चांद मेरे तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं असगर मैं तेरी माँ मेरे लाडले कहाँ हो मेरे लाडले कहाँ हो सीने तुम्हें लगाऊं असगर में तेरी माँ आ जाओ चांद मेरे तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं असगर में तेरी माँ बेटा तुम्हारा कातिल मेरे सामने खड़ा है जाने क्यों हंस रहा है चादर भी लुट चुकी है मुँह किस तरह छुपाऊं असगर में तेरी माँ आ जाओ चांद मेरे तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं असगर में तेरी माँ तेरे झूले को सकीना रो रो के चूमती है तुझे घर में ढूंढती है तेरी मौत की खबर में कैसे उसे सुनाऊं असगर में तेरी माँ आ जाओ चांद मेरे तेरी प्यास मैं बुझाऊं असगर में तेरी माँ मेरी जान जा रही है ये सोच सोच असगर इस